might just start off with yourself, Stella, and then I'll move through. So presenters, feel free to unmute yourselves. What would you say is the most important thing a person can do during their first meeting with someone to create a positive, lasting impression on the other side?
The most important thing, I think, apart of the, normal thing is a firm handshake, good eye contact with smile and dress properly. But I think is if we need we have to leave the impression for the people when you first met. Maybe we have to become a person with value during the network or conversation. We got if we got the chance to give some value to into this networking. I think beyond the, a lot of people, they go networking, they have some purpose, some people mix up networking with marketing, so they will sell. But I think if we can just do the networking with no purpose, it will be great. And if we got chance, we can create value. So you can live I think you can impress people, especially when you first meet someone.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. Charlie, what would you say is the most important thing a person can do in their first meeting to make a positive impression?
Quick story to answer that. I had a one-to-one with someone recently, and we were supposed to be talking about business because we're business people in a business context, and we've sat down for a business meeting, if you like. We didn't talk about business at all. We talked about Formula One. It's a passion of mine, and in particular, we had a heated argument. I'm going to say it was an argument about whether Lewis Hamilton is the greatest of all time. Now, you'll be thinking one of three things at this point. Number one, you'll agree he is. Number two, you'll say, no way, he never is. Or number three, you'll go, who the hell's Lewis Hamilton? I don't care. The point was that when we had that discussion, as I say, it was heated. It was definitely heated. We didn't agree. We had to agree to disagree in the end. But the thing is, it created a connection between us. It got me to know stuff about him. It created that bond, that connection. So now, since we've seen each other since, immediately we'll start talking about Formula One. It has that connection. It forms a relationship. I think so often we're trying to create relationships on a business level. Look, of course you're going to do that, absolutely. But in the end of the day, we're people, and if you don't buy into the person behind the business, then I think you'll suffer. So for me, always get to know stuff. There'll always be some common ground between you. Find it. Whatever that common ground is, find it. And then that's the formation of a relationship, or the start of a relationship.
So are you trying to tell me that Lewis Hamilton outdid Mika Hakkinen when it comes to Formula One drivers?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. We'll have to have an argument another time, I think.
You're very strict about that. I think it's clear which side of the fence I land on. But anyway, that as I say, that's irrelevant from this point of view. It's just finding that basis of a relationship.
Yeah, and I think it's so true. If you can find a way to connect person to person, the rest will take care of itself over time. Mark, what would you say is the most important thing a person can do during their first meeting to create a lasting positive impression?
I'm going to mention a trick that was taught to me by a lovely chap called Frank D'Arafali, who's also a BNI executive director, now national director, also in America, and author and so on. And one of the things he said was that when you go to, because I'm very much like some of you, the unnatural networker, I'd rather be sort of crying in a corner than actually going out and sort of shaking hands to people people I don't know. So in one of his talks, he mentioned actually creating a list of questions. Just have a list of questions that you can kind of ask anybody, and that generally make a good impression. So I thought, well, I'll try that. So I start going out. I land in Madrid. I don't know anybody in Madrid. So I thought, well, I need to start a BNI, a series of BNI chapters here. So I need to go out and do some networking. and created my list of questions, took them out, started talking to people. So there would be questions like, what's your biggest challenge? Or if I were standing face to face with a potential client for you, how would I know that that's a potential client for you? In other words, what kind of things do they say? What kind of things do they do? What challenges do they have? How can you help them with those challenges? 17 questions on this piece of paper. Okay. So I went to these networking events, as many as I could, started asking these questions. They always, they always want you to talk first. It's really important to get them to talk first, so that you can ask the questions. And what happened was exactly what Frank said would happen, which was after asking all the questions, they would just like go, wow, I've never been asked those questions before in a networking event. That's amazing. But now I don't know what to ask you. And so I just handed them the piece of paper and said, well, why don't you ask me these questions? Because I knew that if they asked me those questions, then they would have the information that I wanted them to have about me, about my business, about my target market. And so for me, I mean, there are lots of things, and all the things that Stella and Charlie have said obviously are very, very valuable. But for me, number one was probably just having a really good list of questions which nobody else is asking, which show that you're interested, and which enable you to both gain information and pass on useful information.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I think too, for me, it's always, funnily enough, in the follow-up, if you can collect one story from a person that they really care about while you're talking to them the first time that you meet them, and then when you meet them again, you remember a part of that story and ask them a question about it, it shows that you were actually paying attention and cared about what they were talking about.
Yes.
And I find,
am I allowed to mention something just to spoil Frederick's intervention in case he was going to say this? Kind of just following on from what you said, my memory is awful. I've got a great memory for faces, really bad memory for names. So I would take a business card and ask permission to make notes on the back of the business, because you don't want to just start writing on someone's card without asking, right? So would you mind if I would write some of this down? This is really interesting. And I said, yeah, but what I was really writing down was like, okay, so this guy's called Charlie Lawson, tall bloke, pink shirt, beard, and his son plays rugby or whatever. And so the next time I get in touch, I could say something like, how was your son's rugby tournament that you were talking about? And they go, oh wow, you remembered. I did not remember at all, but I did write it down. So that, again, another useful trick.
Yeah, no, very cool. Frederick, are you still floating around? Would you like to share, since you've joined us this evening, what you think is the most important thing a person can do?
Sure. Thank you. The most important thing I feel is making sure that that we listen to that other person and find that rapport, build that rapport by listening, asking questions. That's pretty much what I do. And if you can find some interest, it's so funny because when I go to an event and there's somebody I know there, they always come up to me, they're very well trained, and they say, hey, Frederick, when's the last time you went surfing? What, they're doing it to me, like they know that I'm going to light up like a Christmas tree. And I think that's very funny. So if I'd like to ask them, so what do you do for fun? That's one of my questions.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do for fun? And the goal of the interaction is to try and help them by connecting them with somebody else. Networking, people think, like Stella was saying, people think that networking is selling. It's not. Networking is connecting somebody that you've met with somebody else in a way that is useful and helpful. And will they take your call later on? Will they thank you? Or they might even call you and say, hey, look, thank you so much for making that connection. And that's the goal, really, is to help someone and expecting nothing in return.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with that. I think if you can become that circle of influence where you solve all the challenges for all of you human beings, then you're always in a really powerful place. So, Stella, if we go back to you, what would you say is the biggest mistake you find people make when they start networking and they're trying to grow their business?
Yeah, people, maybe, I don't know, in Australia, in Hong Kong, or in some Asia place, People maybe used to selling, you know, sometimes they have some purpose to do networking. So I think it's the big mistake. I heard someone said that go networking when you don't need anything. That means you are not going to a networking for selling or for try to close someone. So it's people hate that, I think. And another thing is you maybe you can find something for your network. You go networking for your network, better for yourself, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip. What about yourself, Charlie? What would you say is the biggest mistake people make?
I think the biggest mistake is selling, but that one's been covered. So let's go on to the second biggest mistake. Again, I'll use a story or analogy to share this. 2 or 3 years ago, my daughter Maggie May, she's now 7, but she was about 4 at the time, and she was dead excited because we were planting some carrots in the garden. She was so excited about this, and we'd prepared the ground and we'd got the seeds out, we'd put them in nice, neat little rows, and she was muddy. Obviously, there was mud everywhere, just all over the place, and she was so excited about, she planted the seeds and then she watered them, and and you could see the buoyancy and energy in her. And then suddenly, it was like a switch flick. She looked really disappointed. I was like, what's wrong? And she wanted the instant gratification of, she planted the carrots, so now I want carrots, please. Can I have the carrots now? And obviously, it's clear what's going on. What really needs to happen is you need to tend those plants over time, make sure they get sunlight, make sure insects don't get them, blah, 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 and you get over time some carrots. But her 4-year-old mind couldn't quite compute that. She's changed a bit now. She's 7. I think she gets it now. But I think a lot of people approach networking the same way. They think they're going to get the instant gratification. They think they're going to get results immediately. And as relationships take time to build, it takes a really long time to, if you think of good friends of yours, how long does it take for them to become a good friend? It takes hours and hours and hours of interaction and time spent with each other. It doesn't happen overnight. And if you want to get into people's contacts, if if someone's going to refer you, well, then the risk is on them. So they've got to know that you're going to do a good job, and they know that you're going to be enhance their reputation by referring them. So for me, the biggest mistake, I think, or second biggest mistake, because selling is, I would say, it's the first, is just not giving it enough time and expecting that quick win, and it just doesn't work like that. You've got to take time to build a relationship.
Yeah, and it's so true. You'll get people that will join different membership organisations or even BNI sometimes. And they'll give it 12 months and then they're like, oh, it's not doing anything for me, or it's not making me enough money. And yet, most of the membership organisations I'm a member of, I've been a member of 3, 4, 5 years, and now they're paying serious dividends. But in the first 2 years, I got some wins here and there, but not, it wasn't money raining from the sky. You definitely have to put the hard yards in. Mark, we're up to the third biggest mistake, I think, now. So hopefully we've still got some to talk about.
Yeah, there are definite disadvantages of being sort of down in the question order, I suppose. Yeah. I would say maybe not thinking enough about the first impression. In other words, I guess you need to know where you're going, what kind of people are likely to attend. So things like, and this is generally a guy thing. I find that ladies don't generally make this kind of mistake, but guys either not looking particularly scrubbed up, not looking particularly well dressed, bad breath can be off-putting at a networking event. I remember somebody saying, if anyone ever offers you a mint at a networking event, you should probably take it, which I thought was pretty good advice. But just not thinking enough about the first impression. I think a lot of people have the feeling that, but people should just accept me the way I am because I say so. And the world doesn't really look like that. It doesn't really behave like that. People make judgments on their terms, not on our terms. And we should just, I don't know, if we have a clear goal for attending a networking event, which should be starting potentially profitable relationships, then we do need to think about that first impression, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Frederick, did you want to join the conversation? Have you got mistake number? We're up to number 4, I think.
Well, everyone's mentioned, the top ones. So to add to what everyone's saying, I think if you don't have a plan when you go to a networking event, and if you don't understand that how this all fits into a wider strategy of creating a powerful network of people that you know, like, and trust, then why are you going? Like you're just wasting your time, because you need to have that long-term vision, that long-term plan. And yeah, you just got to get to know the people there and follow up with them, say, hey, I don't have a property lawyer in my team. I don't have people that I know that are great at what you do. Let's do a one-to-one. So I think you have to have this plan.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think one of the things that I really like to do and that I talk about in the book is having that strategic networking action plan and being really clear about who are the people who can refer you work on a regular basis. And then outside of that, where do they play? So what industry associations are they a part of? Where should you be playing and networking? Because if you're in what do they say? If you're the biggest fish in the pond and everyone knows who you are when you walk into the room, then you're playing in the wrong room. You have to go find other ponds to play in as well. So I think that vision is really, really important. I'm going to mix up the question order a little bit. This is a question I get asked all of the time because often some of my best clients come from really contacts that I haven't spoken to personally for a long time, but I'm connected on LinkedIn and other places. So how can you strengthen relationships that have gone cold rather than just burn them and let them fall away? What's something that you can do that will actually strengthen it or reignite it? And to be fair, we're going to start in the opposite order this time. Frederick, I'm going to let you go first.
Well, first of all, I think that these contacts that have gone cold are really powerful, and that's really people that you've known in the past, and you've done stuff with them over time. That is really that generates value, and so when you just reach out to them and say, hey, we haven't spoken in a long time. Let's catch up for coffee. That's a warm contact. And, the founder of BNI talks about that. This is really good stuff. And I've done that in the past recently. I've reconnected with people that I used to work with, 10, 15 years ago. And it's wonderful to meet these people. And we're helping each other. And we just pick up where we left off.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, over to you.
Yeah, I think, as Frederick said, I guess the easiest thing is to pick up the phone and say, I've been thinking about you, whatever. But also, kind of coming back to something that Charlie mentioned as well in his kind of tricks for networking, is work in a situation like that. Focus more on the personal side than on the professional side, probably, I would say. So in other words, I was thinking about you. I remember your daughter goes to ballet. I was just reading an article or whatever it is, or maybe send an article or tag somebody in something, give them a call. But bear in mind that at that point, you're trying to rekindle a relationship. So probably the personal touch is better than the professional touch, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. Charlie?
Yeah, I agree with what's been said already. I'm just when you ask that question, you think your contacts in your phone. And I'll just pull out my phone, and I don't know if you know, on an iPhone, forgive me, Android users, but on an iPhone, if you go to your contacts and then press the little hash key at the bottom of the A to Z on the side, it tells you how many contacts you got. And I've got 1,129 contacts in my phone. I mean, clearly don't connect with them all very often. You can all feel free to put that number in the chat. Why not? Let's have a little competition, see who's got the most contacts. Yeah, I mean, the fact is, in networking, we all know it's not what you know, it's who you know. I mean, that's a simple one, but I don't think it's who you know, it's how well you know them. So if they are 1,129 contacts, I mean, quite frankly, most of them are going to be useless because I don't connect with them. So yeah, it's not like the size. You know, you look at social media following. People say, "Oh, I've got X thousand followers," or whatever it might be. Well, that's useless unless you're actually interacting with them, engaging with them. So engage with people. I think that's the biggest thing. Be it that picking up the phone, be it a social media post, be it dropping them a WhatsApp message, whatever it is. Just be in touch. And if they return the call, well, then they have still a contact. If they don't, then maybe you have to move on.
No, absolutely. I found the other day I sent an email out to all of my really old contacts that I'd lost touch with. And 4 of those were old clients that weren't doing any work with me with the social media agency anymore. And 2 of them have come back. And I just emailed them and said, look, COVID's been horrible. Are you guys okay? How are you going? You know, is there any introductions that I can make for you that might be beneficial? And they came back and said, oh, actually, can we talk to you about our digital marketing? I'm like, okay, sure, come have coffee. It will be fine. So yeah, that personal touch without an agenda works really well. Stella, how about you? What would you say?
Yeah, directly, just call him or her. Yeah, have a coffee, or you form a mastermind group or sports group. Just invite them if you know their strength or what they like. So just invite them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I do, I'm a little bit structured with this kind of stuff. I think it's the methodical part of my nature. So I have 4 different events that I host that have nothing to do with my businesses and everything to do with keeping people connecting to new people and reinvigorating relationships. So once a month, I have a Not a Boardroom lunch where I have 20 business owners who come. I invite 10 and they all bring a guest with them, and we just have a long lunch and talk about whatever we want to talk about. And the other one that I do that I really enjoy is a dinner for the driven. So it's actually for women who are really successful business women who don't like women's only networking events. So it's a bit ironic, and we all get together and have a dinner and just have a real conversation, kind of cone of silence thing. So I think things like that, where you can put on some informal events and give people an opportunity to come and catch up with you, but have a reason to come and catch up with you, can be really beneficial as well. So I'm just checking on time. We've got plenty, which is good. So I'm going to throw to, what is your favorite networking story? And I'm going to preface it a little bit with, I suppose, the reason that I have ended up with now 2 books, but my favorite networking story is how Ivan Meisner ended up writing the foreword for my first book, because it all started with me being a bit of a smart ass and cheeky. So I'd been a BNI member for about 3 months when Simon Derek Roberts, who was the executive director for South Australia at the time, posted on Facebook that he was going to director training in Wollongong, and Wollongong's a nice surfside city, so Frederick would have been quite happy to be there. And I said, oh, that sounds fantastic and I love training, but you know, I'm not a director, so I guess I can't come. And he private messaged me and said, oh, actually, I've asked Frederick, the national director, and he said that he's happy for you to attend if you'd like to attend. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I better attend then. So I went to Wollongong, and then I met John Williamson and Brent Edwards, who are 2 other executive directors who are fairly well known in Australia, and ended up making good friends with them. And I said to them, oh, you know, I'd really like to talk to someone about whoever runs BNI Australia's social media. I'd like to give them some ideas, because I think that they could connect, you know, much more on a human level. I understand they've probably got someone that does that. And anyway, John and Brent kind of adopted me and took me under their wing. And so I ended up 3 years later doing all of the social media. Frederick let me test BNI South Australia. He didn't know me well enough to give me the country to play with, so he gave me a state to play with. It's a bit safer. And I did that for a year. And then he gave me Australia to look after. And then when I wrote the book, I didn't know Ivan well enough to ask Ivan if he'd write the foreword, but thought I had enough favors in the bank with Frederick that I could ask Frederick to ask Ivan. And so I think that thing of cultivating relationships over time and earning your credibility is really important. But what I'm interested in is your favorite networking story where someone has really cultivated that relationship and it's paid dividends for them at the end. So hopefully my story has given you enough thinking time. And Stella, if I can start with you, and we'll go back in the normal order so everyone knows where's coming.
Yeah, okay. There's a lot of networking story, but I picked one recently. It's really impressed me. I saw from Facebook, there's a member, he mentioned, his name is Jason. He said, oh, I'm so happy I received a thank you note for about 4 million US dollar.
Wow.
So I said, what happened? Please tell me. And then it's back to 2018. We have our global convention in Thailand, Bangkok. Is the very first one out of US. I believe all you guys remember Mark, Frederick, and Lawson, Charlie, right? So in before 4 days of the convention, Tiago, the national director of Spain, and I forgot the name, another part, and he bring his director and one ED maybe came to Hong Kong because he would like to attend our LT forum. He would like to see how we do that, because he heard about that. It's very good to retain member and so on. So he came 2-3 days before. After the LT forum, on that morning, in the afternoon, we have to all go to Bangkok. And me and Stanley, our flight is a little bit early. So I saw a member in the forum, and I know he's going to Bangkok, and his flight is the time similar with Tiago and the director team. So I asked this member, Jason, I said, hey, Jason, can you please help me to take care of Tiago and bring them to the airport? He said, no problem. So he called Uber and arranged everything. So he sent them to the airport together and to the Bangkok. So he became friend with one of the director. And last year, 2019, when we were our convention in Poland, Jason went there. He is a member only, not even ambassador director. But he, maybe, I don't know why he go. He just said, oh, I want to go. So he met the director from Spain again. So they are so happy, say hello to each other. And after that, they keep contact. And after COVID-19, Jason, he sent out some masks to Spain, to the director. And after 1 or 2 months, he got a referral from this director, one of the member who is looking for the Lawson for the COVID-19. Anyway, so he got this. He's looking for another chapter member to give him this referral, and finally, done deal. Only the trial order, it's about 4 million US dollar.
Wow, that's
the business.
Yeah.
So I asked him, why you can do this business? Because he said, because we have connection, we keep contact, and then he tried to ask me. So I try to help him, and he find another connection in Hong Kong. So finally, he lined up this business. Referral become business. So it's a start from 3 years ago and networking, and within 2 years, they just keep a normal contact, but finally become a business done deal. So I'm so happy to to hear this networking story.
Yeah, it's a great story.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Stella. Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many stories, and when I saw the question, I was like, okay, well, which one should I tell? And there's one I actually had to do. I prepared this for a presentation recently, actually, so I had to research this referral story. I was asked to do a story about it was to an outside organisation. It wasn't a BNI session, and they particularly wanted to know about getting referrals into corporates. So I thought, what's the best story I've heard about that? And stories about a guy called Andy Bounds. You may have heard of him. He's a very, very good speaker. He's a sales trainer. That's his main thing. He's based in the UK. He's very, very good. If you get a chance to see him, do so. About 15 years ago, business was going well, and he got some corporate clients, but he wanted some household names on his CV. And he was trying to think who that could be. But as I went through the referral, I was able to get quite a lot. I know Andy well. He's a good friend. I know the target, and I'll come to that in a second, quite well for another reason, but I also know the referrers. The referrers were my mum and dad. And they were my predecessors running BNI in the UK. And Andy had done a lot of work for BNI in the UK at that point, done a lot of work developing training and content. And because my mum and dad were pleased with what he'd done for them, when he asked for referrals, they were only happy to help. And they asked him, typical BNI style, be specific, who do you want to talk to? Well, Andy had done his homework. He wanted this household name. He was after a bank in the UK, NatWest Bank, a major high street name. The interesting thing was, and he knew that BNI might be able to help him with this because we'd started to build a relationship with the bank. It hadn't got very far. They had a few bankers in BNI chapters, but not many. Anyway, he knew he needed to be speak to. He's a guy called Jim Edgar, and I was able to research this bit as well because it was quite. Jim Edgar, now I know through all sorts of random connections, he's now a non-executive director in our business. So I was able to get the client's side of view of this referral as well. Anyway, Andy wanted to train NatWest business bankers and sales techniques. He knew he could make the bank a lot of money. Thing is, my parents didn't know this guy Jim. They knew someone else, a guy called Jason, who was their contact. But Jason had seen enough of what Martin and Gilly had done, or my parents had done for the bank, and was therefore comfortable to put his reputation on the line for Andy. And when he did so, he went in for a couple of days. I think he did sort of $3,000 a day, sort of sales training techniques, a £6,000 job, pretty good, just a nice starter. But the thing is with referrals is there's a lot more to that. Because you've been recommended in, if you do your job right, you do more than just make yourself look good while hoping to be rebooked and used again. And what he found was Jim, this guy at the bank, would spoon feed Andy things to say from the stage. So when he was training them, he'd say, well, you want to do things like, use the words that Jim wanted them to use, or citing an example where Jim did X, Y, or Z. Effectively, Andy was Jim's own personal PR department within the bank. Made him look good. He was very happy. 3 months later, they'd made a whole lot more from higher sales. But this was only the starting point. The thing is, NatWest sits in the wider RBS group, Royal Bank of Scotland group, and other groups within the organisation. So Jim, his department, and then there were other departments. From within 2 or 3 years, Andy had 43 different buyers from within the RBS group, and they were just continuing to use him. And as a result of that, Andy became NatWest were Andy's first £1 million client. So you can see Andy benefited from the referral. You can also see how the bank benefited, because quite frankly, a bank doesn't pay out $1 million in fees unless they're making, 20 million themselves. The other thing that really happened that was cool from this is, you look at the different parties in the referral relationship. Andy benefited, the bank benefited. My mum and dad, BNI, benefited because they've done such a good job referring Andy in that NatWest looked at them and said, wow, you really helped us here. You made such a difference. And that's when they really started. And we went from something like 10 or 15 BNI NatWest bankers in BNI to about 250. They kept putting more and more people in. And so every party in the relationship in the referral benefited. And just from Andy's point of view, it didn't stop there, because the person he was connected to, or one of those 43 departments that he was connected to at the RBS group, left the organization, went to work for the Citizen Bank in the States. She brought Andy over to the US. He did some work then. She then moved to Standard Life. This same lady brought Andy in there. And as we speak, Standard Life at Andy's, I think they're very close to becoming his second £1 million client. So that one referral has literally led to millions of pounds worth of business over time, over many years, and over different people. But I thought it was a pretty cool referral story. And if we could all get some of those, then I think we'd all be very happy.
I think so. Mark, what about yourself?
Yeah, there are a lot of, I mean, being in I guess, the world's largest referral organizations, we should probably have a few decent referral stories. I can think of members, there was a member in Madrid who got referred to a member in New York, and the Madrid member had a logistics transport business. And this was actually years ago when our kind of online platform, BNI Connect, had really just started. So it was less than a year old, and he was one of the first, if not the first, members in Spain who actually got a first contract of 300,000 transporting containers from the US to Asia, I believe. And that first referral soon turned into several referrals, earning him well over $1 million. There are lots of referral stories. Because I'm a bit of an old softie. I like the personal ones as well. So I like stories like we had a member whose son was diagnosed with meningitis, was basically at death's door, and just the way all of their fellow chapter members just kind of rallied around. They ran their business for them while they were spending days and nights at the hospital. They got referrals for them for some of their specialists, and so on. The story has a very happy ending, that the child had some pretty rough weeks, and then the whole family had rough weeks, and at one point they thought they were going to lose their son, but very happy ending. And the son was fine, the business was fine, the family was fine. And those are the kind of stories as well, which sometimes makes me realize that we're doing a lot more than business when we're connecting people. We're actually creating a very positive influence on many people's lives. So like I say, yeah, I'm a big softie, so I'm going to side in favor of the personal story in this case.
Yeah, no, that's a great story too. For those of you online, if you've got questions for the panel, drop them in the chat. I'm going to hand over to Frederick while you've got time to do that. So Fred, what's your favorite networking story?
So there's a lady called Sharon Watson in Queensland, and she's been a networker in the BNI world for 10 years. And about 4 years ago, she had sold her business, her second business, and she married this guy, and he was an electrician. And so they got married, and then he was employed, as an employee of a company. And Sharon said, look, that's great. You got to do a great job and all that, but let's start a business. And he went, what? He said, yeah, we're going to start a business. And so she went back to her chapter. She took the air conditioning seat, and she came back with $6,000 worth of work. And they now have 12 employees. Okay. So this is her third business in BNI. Okay. And, in Australia, 12 employees, not many companies in Australia have more than 5 employees. And that's pretty much true of most businesses around the world. It's when you look at the stats, most businesses in the world are actually small businesses. And to have 12 employees, that's pretty amazing. And it's not selling to BNI members, it's about selling through them, and she's got excessive helper genes. She can't help herself. Whatever she does, she's a networker and she grows. So yeah, networking for results.
I like it. So we've got a question from Kerry Thompson. Kerry, can you unmute yourself and turn on your video and ask your question for me? If she's still there.
Hello. I'm interested to know how many networking groups each of you belong to.
So that's going to be just to give you the cultural context. That's either going to be industry associations or membership organisations or chambers of commerce, things like that.
Yeah, just to give me an idea, and everyone an idea of, you know, do we look to join 1 group, 5 groups, 10 groups? Just interested to hear how different people do it.
Cool. I'm going to give the panel some thinking time while I tell you how many I'm a member of. So I have all 3 of my businesses are members of Business SA. We were members of Showcase South Australia up until very recently, Tourism Industry Council of South Australia, Australian Hotels Industry Association, so as well as BNI. And then over and above that, probably online, Kerry, maybe 12 different networking groups that still meet face-to-face, like SA Woman and things like that. But yeah, Charlie, we'll start with you.
Do you want me to turn myself off?
Yes, please, Kerry, thanks.
Great question, Kerry. I talk about how you've got to have a certain number of networks, but not too many, because otherwise you just can't be active all. And the worst thing you can do is I mean, you take a social media profile, and if you see the last post on there was December 2015 or something, and it just doesn't look very good. It doesn't keep your credibility very high. So yeah, for me, I think there's 3 networks I'm probably pretty involved in. BNI is obviously one. I'm in one professional speaker association in the UK. I do a lot of work with that, and I guess I'm going to say the 3rd one would be LinkedIn. I know it's not a specific small networking group probably in the way you're asking, but I'd say as a community that would be the 3rd one I'd be pretty involved in. So yeah, I stick to 3. That feels the right number for me and how I can manage, especially with me being a bit of an unnatural networker and trying to avoid networking whenever I can. So yeah.
Stella.
Yeah, I agree with Charlie. I think 2 to 3 is enough. Yeah, especially if you pick. Of course, BNI is one of, I think, is the most important, and then the other one maybe it's related to your business, or yeah, and then 3rd one maybe your maybe a social, more social, not only business. Yeah, you can have more different network.
Yeah, that makes sense. Frederick?
I'm involved in 2 local ones, business associations in my where I live, but the ones I really enjoy are related to the franchise sector, because a lot of our clients in Australia, we have 6,500 members across the country. We have over 100 franchise systems. And so I get involved in the Franchise Council of Australia, the Franchise Relationships Institute. They run these boot camps and training sessions, and I'm at all of those events, because that's where really powerful relationships are built, you know, while you're training together and all that. So that's what I do.
Nice. Mark?
Yeah, other than BNI, obviously, I've been involved in Chamber of Commerce here in Madrid. There's an association for self-employed, ATA in Spanish, self-employed business owners, CEO Club, and I guess that's it as far as business networks are concerned. But I think we probably shouldn't overlook other kinds of networks as well. Things like, you know, parent-teacher associations, things like mountain bike club, things like whatever it is that you like to do. I mean, I've met some very, very influential people through non-business meetings or associations. So I think it's probably a good idea not to overlook that kind of gathering as well.
Yeah, for sure. Helen, so you've got the next question.
Let me just find my unmute button, Simone. Mine was, because we've done so much networking online this year, which we probably wouldn't have expected to have done what we did prior to this year. But have you experts got any tips for that are more relevant for online networking that you've picked up after you know, being online doing all the networking this year? Is there anything that was more specific to the online forum than being face to face?
I'm going to start with Mark and we'll go in reverse this time.
Yes, definitely. There are certainly some things that you need to be very, very aware of. First of all is time. You know, it may be fine in a networking situation to kind of make a comment that might last for 3 minutes. Can't do that online. People shut off. So what I usually say is that in the online world, days become hours, hours become minutes, minutes become seconds. You have to compress absolutely everything time-wise, which also means that any kind of follow-up you need to be doing needs to be done within minutes or hours, certainly not within days. And things like, do you remember the comment I made about the importance of making a good first impression at a face-to-face networking event? That's so true also in the online world. So in other words, if you're either just sitting there with your camera off or sitting there playing on your phone, or I'm sure you've all seen this.
Yeah.
She's somebody who's apparently involved in an online meeting, but they're not involved at all because they're on the phone, they're doing other stuff. So that for me would be a big no. And whenever I can, I usually turn off their camera if I'm like one of the one of the hosts.
Yeah.
Just so that nobody else is actually seeing that there's somebody on the call who's not paying attention to whoever's speaking. So that would be my.
No, that's cool. Okay, so Frederick, we're going to go to you, but before you open, I'm noticing we're tight on time. So if you can just add succinctly your point of view so we can get through everyone, that would be great.
What Mark said, you just really need to be mindful of the first impression, and the first impression I think just lasts longer when you're online.
Yeah, fantastic. Charlie.
Moss and Frederick covered it there. I think for me, be present. It's so easy, you know, as Mark said, your phone's right there, your emails are one click away. You know, can you imagine if in a, you know, or your Facebook feed is just, you can just sit there and scroll through it. Can you imagine at an in-person event doing the equivalent, kind of sort of saying, sorry, I'm just not really listening, I'm just going to flick through my phone here. Clearly it wouldn't go down very well. So quite why people think it could go down. Yeah, thanks, Mark. Quite why people think it would go down well in a online environment. I have no idea. So yeah, be present, I think, for me.
Yeah, cool. Stella?
Yeah, same. Turn on your camera. Yeah, sit still. Yeah, this is the and then shorten the time when you doing the presentation, whatever. It's internet speed. The speed, people impatient. Yeah. So normally in face-to-face, in-person meeting, we may have 2 hours, but online maximum 45 minutes to 1 hour is maximum.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, Helen, to answer your question too, there's probably 5 things I try and make sure I do in online networking. The first thing is that I turn off my phone altogether and put it away. I make sure that I have a really nice close up shot so that you can see my face, because it's really hard to feed on people's energy when they're not right there with you. So if you're closer to the camera, you've got good lighting and people can actually see you and see your eyes, that's really important because it makes you feel like you're more connected to people in a way that really matters. And then make sure that you don't talk in a monotone. Sometimes people get in the habit, it's like they're reading something off their screen, and so you lose people because you don't have any expression on your face or in your voice. So really important. I'm going to stretch the time a little bit because I think Gary's question is actually a really good one to finish on. So Gary Paradise, can you unmute yourself and share your question with the panel?
I certainly can. So over a period of time, we've obviously got a lot busier and a lot more successful through everything we've done. Some of that's to do with BNI, some of that's to do with all our other networking, and everything put together, we've become into a business that's really, really busy. And so I've got a large, and I feel quite a big portion of that's on me. So I've got a large connection, a lot of people in my network that I feel I need to maintain contact with in order to stay successful and keep these relationships going along. And the trouble I've found is that there's only so much you can fit in any period of time you have. And I think we're all kind of, as you get more and more successful, we all struggle with that scenario. And I don't really want to dump people because I don't feel like I'm that type of person. I actually want to stay in touch with everybody, but you just physically can't. So some of the skills I've learned to deal with that is I've tried to spread that around the team. And you try and do all sorts of other sort of contact bases where you touch base with a lot of people as often as you can. However, I'm kind of interested to know what you guys find is the best way of communicating and keeping that relationship tight with so many people in your audience.
And we'll start with you, Charlie, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to be the best person to answer this question, Gary. I'm being brutally honest with you. I am an unnatural networker, and so I don't try and necessarily keep up with everyone. And my honest advice is, I think you know, you can go broad with a number of contacts. You know, you can have a wide network, but it's the depth that counts, and it's how well you know people. And honestly, we've got to be realistic. I don't know if you can get to know everyone in your network to the level it takes to really be having a productive networking, you know, back and forth referral relationship. I just don't know if that's possible. Certainly isn't for me. Now, there are people who probably manage that better than me. I'm not going to say it can't be done, but I genuinely would look to go deep with fewer. That would be my advice. I quite like what you're saying. You know, you're spreading it around your team, and maybe that is a way to increase and leverage the size of the network. But yeah, for me, we keep it small. That would be my view.
Yeah, cool. Mark.
This is an interesting question, Gary. Okay, so what I'm going to say might be a little bit unexpected. When I think when people, you know what it's like when you start a business, you create at some point you probably create your organization chart. So you've got your sales department, you've got your marketing department, you got whatever it is, and your name is in every box at the beginning, right? And the idea is for, as time goes on, you want to be taking your name out of the box and putting other people's names in, so that you have a team of people managing the business, the technical side of the business, the operational side of the business, I guess you would say. Where I feel that that my time is best invested is probably actually in the relational aspect of my business. So in other words, I would probably get other people doing the technical stuff. I would get other people doing the operational side of stuff, and I would very much focus on actually talking to people. I spend most of my time either on the phone or on Zoom calls or whatever, and I have a fabulous team of people who are very good at managing the kind of operational side of the business, but it's the relationships actually that I focus on more. So there you go.
That's exactly how it's gone. Exactly how it's gone.
That's cool. Frederick.
I can't add anything to that. That was insanely great, Charlie and Mark. And Gary, if you're doing that, man, you're doing everything. I'd like to have your problems. There's good problems to have.
Stella?
I don't have good tips for this because I'm not good in stay with a lot of group of people. So sorry about that, Gary. I don't have any tips for you.
I will.
I think, yeah.
I was going to say I will share my tips. So the first thing that I would say that you have to start off with, and we do talk about it in the book, is have real clarity around what your 6-word story is for your business. And what I mean by that is, what is the emotional reaction that you want your customers and the people that deal with you to have every time that they engage with you? So, you know, I often talk about the Duke of Brunswick, which is my pub, and that story is the outside world doesn't matter here. So it doesn't matter who engages with anybody, whether it's the staff, whether it's, you know, our customers, suppliers. Our whole job is to make the world melt away and make their day a better day. If I talk about it in the context of BNI and Adelaide North, the story is every member is family to us. And this is perhaps a not particularly politically correct point of view, but we don't always love our family, but we always want the best for them. So even if it's inconvenient, we will bend over backwards to help them. But I think once you've got your 6-word story and you've got it straight and you can communicate that with the team, then you can get clarity around what are the touch points that everybody has in the organisation that maintains that story. So I will reach out to all of my clients, even though I don't deal with them on a day-to-day basis. Once every 3 months, they'll get a random email, or it appears random, from me that says, hey, just checking in, how's Payam doing looking after your account? Is there any feedback you want to give me on his performance? And so they feel like they're important because the person that owns the business is still in touch with them. And then when it comes to LinkedIn and things like that, and have a really broad network on LinkedIn, that is often not deep. There are some people in it that it's quite deep with, but it's about knowing what you stand for and who you are as a person and how you want to be seen. And so I only ever put content on my socials, and most of you guys are connected to me on social media. You know, through my posts, the type of person that I am and what I stand for, and that if I can help, I'll help. And so in doing those things, I think it allows you to maintain that sense of contact without it taking up a lot of your time. And it's an art form and it takes practice, but once you get there, you'll start to feel more confident that you're maintaining that connection, Gary, I think.
Awesome.
So on that note, I'm just going to hand over to Hari, which I didn't prep her for this, but Hari is my publisher. And I'm just going to let her, I guess, share a little bit based on her perspective of the session tonight and how she feels the book fits in that respect to helping you guys be confident networkers and make the most of your 2021. So Hari, can you unmute yourself if you're still there?
If I have unmuted myself now. Well, it was a wonderful discussion to follow and so much wisdom. I'm really not sure how much I have to add to anything that you've said in terms of the book. As you know, working with you, Simone, is always an absolute joy. You're so very clear about what it is that you do and why you do it. And I think that comes across in everything you do personally and also in terms of your networking, which then translates into the book. So everything that you've discussed, everything that I know of you from our personal relationship is there to be accessed through the new book, through Confident Networker. Yeah, it's just an inspiration in terms of how to ensure that people feel heard and recognized and understood, which is really the foundation of every relationship, I think, and something that you're very aware of. And I suppose it's, you know, that's kind of your whole message and understanding is what you can do and how you can help. And you're extremely good at that and at helping and enabling other people to see how they can do that as well in the context of their own lives. And one of the interesting things, maybe from everything that all of you have said and the questions that have been asked, is you know, how you make what you have and what you have to give and what it is that you need connect with your networks. And that's really the central theme of the book, that it's not a template that you follow in terms of, you know, you follow these steps and it's very prescriptive. It's understanding yourself and how you translate that into the wider world so that everybody can benefit, you and your broader networks, how you can all help each other.
Thanks, Hari. That's awesome. So thanks everyone for being on my book launch. It's been lots of fun. If you do want to get a copy of the book, you can just Google Confident Networker. You'll find it on Booktopia. And I think that the Kindle version is also on Amazon. It's a fantastic first step for a lot of people, for you guys that are in BNI. If someone's really struggling with how to connect person to person and build those relationships that help them create the lives that they want, that's really what the book is about. It's about empowering them, whether it's understanding different personality profiles and how they network, understanding different generations and how you communicate with those in a way that connects and what's important to them. And lots of great BNI stories, because BNI has been critical to my business success. In fact, it's BNI's fault that I have 3 businesses and 2 books and a radio show, and it just keeps growing. So thanks to my lovely panelists for being part of my life and for joining me this evening. It's been great to see you all online. I really missed Global Convention this year in the face-to-face and catching up with you all. So here's hoping we are all allowed to travel next year. And on that note, I'm going to set you all free to enjoy your mornings, your afternoons and your evenings. And I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.
Wonderful.
See ya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, and well done, Simone.
Thanks. See you soon.
Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you, panelists.